Oh, we're gonna go over the quiz. There's still a few people who haven't finished due to things, but whatever, we can still do it. So let's see, quizzes. Quizzes. No, have it one. Have exam one. That's not what I wanted anyway. I wanted to do the statistics. Yes. Okay. There's a couple that pretty much everyone didn't get, so those are bad questions. If everyone didn't get them, that's on me, right? That's not on you. Oh, this one, let's see. More people got it wrong than right. Company policy prevents us from exchanging your defective wireless router more than 30 days after you purchase. It is an example of an effective explanation. No. I mean, you can say company policy stuff in your body for, your supporting reasons, but that's not a good explanation. People hate it when you say, no, sorry, we can't do it. That's just our policy. You have to have more than that. Okay. Let's do all the red ones, I guess.
That's the
This was on exam.
one.
Yeah, this is all the results from exam one. This one wasn't so good either. Buffer implies the bad news to prepare the reader for the moment when the bad news is announced. You don't imply that in the buffer. You should never include resale or sales promotion material in a negative news message. It kind of seems like this would be true, but we went over this a number of times. And depending on conditions, if, even though it's negative news, if they aren't freaking out or house or whatever, you can put in the closing, promotional stuff. Okay, another red one. Oh, I had a feeling that this was not going to be a good question. And I even went back into the course and added some stuff to say, look at this question. So thank you so much for asking me to speak at the university's graduation ceremony. Is an effective buffer and a refusal letter? So you would think so. I'm going to get rid of this question, but you're not supposed to thank people for something you're going to turn them down for, right? So if you're turning them down, this is a refusal letter. You should avoid thank you because it kind of builds up their hopes, right? Thank you so much for asking me, but I'm not doing it. Okay, that one was pretty good. That one was pretty good. That was it. Those were the only questions that were like super bad. And I'm getting rid of that one. Any questions on the exam other than that stuff? Okay, we're moving along. There's already another quiz coming up for another exam. Pace is unrelenting. We are in week 8. Second part of informal reports. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to create some informational and analytical reports. And then for the grammar, we're going to create different sentence types. If you had CABT 156, the sentence type thing you've already seen, although most of you were still like, I don't get this, so we're doing it again. So what we're going to do, obviously do all the normal things, go through the Canvas, read the reading, and then you're going to create 3 reports: trip report, summary report, analytical report. And then for the grammar, we're going to do it in class. We're going to combine sentences using coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. And then we usually have our little short quiz. I don't think we have a discussion. Maybe we do. And the Dick and Jane primer picture, that's foreshadowing. Okay, going over the reading, preparing short informational reports. So like I said, this is part 2. Last time we kind of got a vague overview of reports. So just talking, when we mentioned there was basically two categories, informational and analytical. So right now we're talking about informational reports. They deliver non-sensitive data. And so you can almost always use the direct message strategy for those. And, we're still using conversational informal tone, but you still have to have the report has to be clear to everybody who's reading it. So we can use headings, lists, and graphics to help with that. It's still business writing, so all the things that we've been doing this whole time, conciseness, clarity, courtesy, correctness, still in force. Okay. So we have a couple of different kinds of reports, even in the informational category. We're going to go over the usual types here. So trip reports, sometimes called conference reports. These are just reports, and this is one that you're going to do where you attended a conference or a convention or something like that. And you are usually required to report back up, like, what'd you see? So you're not doing any analysis in these. These are still informational, but you're just like, I saw this, I saw that. You can have a sort of a conclusion in your closing about, things like there were a lot of displays at the conference about AI or something like that, right? So you're not really doing analysis. You're still just saying what you saw and what was there. But you can, make comments about, well, there was a lot of people there showing automated lawnmowers or whatever the heck it is, right? So yeah, trends, new procedures, innovative equipment. If it's a conference where you're, what do they call those? Improving, you have to do these so many units of improvements in a lot of jobs every year. So you have to go to these certain classes where they bring you up to date on things like legal requirements. So those things you want to report up to the rest of the workforce, because typically, one or two people are selected to go on these trips, not the whole group that you work in. So it's your job to write these reports to sort of convey the information that you saw to the rest of the people who didn't go. And this suggests try to keep it between 3 and 5 topics. That's in the body, add an introduction, add a closing, pretty much it. There's not really a lot to it. So here's kind of a suggested outline for trip, conference, or convention reports. Obviously, you want to begin by saying, I attended this event on this day at this location. Like it said above, 3 to 5 main topics. You can use headings and bullets. You can close, again, not any analysis, but you can suggest that, because there were so many people exhibiting AI software, perhaps we should look at that or something like that. And then if you had expenses, you do that on a separate sheet. Okay, next one. Progress reports or interim reports. These would be the status of continuing projects. And these can be either to people inside the organization, other people you're working with, or it can be to people outside the organization, like you're working with a client doing construction or whatever, doing a remodel, and you need to report to them on a regular basis. How's it going? So I will mention that, at least in the realm of software, which I'm most familiar with, we don't do this anymore. Instead, well, I'm saying generally everybody, but I'm sure there's people who don't do this. Most of the companies that do software have moved to this, what they call agile development, to make things move faster, be more responsive. And so we don't do these progress reports anymore. What we do is a daily stand-up, which is a meeting we have every single day. It's very short. We call it a stand-up so that you don't sit down and get comfortable. Stand up, do your thing, get out, right? And what we used to do is we used to go around to each person and we used to ask them these 3 questions. What did you do? What are you going to do? And is anything blocking you? We did that for years. And then what we found was people were tuning out. because they were worried about what they were going to say about themselves, right? So as everybody else was talking, they were completely tuned out, just thinking about what am I going to say, probably getting anxiety about it, whatever. And then when it would come to them, they'd say their three things and then they'd shut down. So it wasn't very productive. So what we switched to, which I showed you last week, we use those Kanban boards where we have the columns. They can either be like physical Post-its or software systems where you move these virtual cards around, where you have your issue cards, to do, in progress, whatever. And what we switched to was, instead of tracking the people, we track the work. So instead of going person by person, what did you do, blah, 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 we call it walk the board. We go to that Kanban board and we just start. Actually, you start on the right-hand side, and I'll tell you the reason for that in a second. And you just go to every issue. It's like, who's working on this? What's the progress of it? Can I close it? Is it done? And that way it kind of jumps around. Everybody, everyone's still listening. Nobody feels like, oh, it's coming to me. It's going to be my turn. I'm freaking out. And also, it's really not about the people. It's about the work anyway. And sometimes more than one person is working on a task. So they will report on it together. And the reason we start from the right-hand side of the Kanban board is because that's closest to done. If you remember that picture, I can go back if you want me to, but on the left-hand side, it was sort of the to-do, and you can make up column names for whatever is appropriate for your organization, but typically it's to-do, in progress, test, done. And so the things that you've invested the most time in, the company's invested the most time in, are the things that are more to the right. They've already been open, people have been working on them, maybe they're in test. So to get the most value out of those things, out of the company, you want to try and close the things that have the most money spent on them. So you start on the right-hand side of the board and you try to get the things into the close, right? And then you move to the left a little bit and you say, okay, is there anything in test that we can move over? Is there anything in progress that we can move to test? Is there anything to do that we can move to in progress? So you try to move these cards, all about flow. You try to move these cards from the left to the right to done. So that's sort of a tangent, but things are sort of changing. Technology is taking over some of these informational reports. Okay, but if you do a progress report, like if you're a contractor, you're building a house or you're doing a remodel, yeah, you're not going to be doing the software stuff that we do. Although I got to tell you, I use Kanban boards to like organize my own life now. I'm so used to them. I have my own boards for like chores around the house, things I got to do. So even if you're a contractor building a house, you might be using some of these agile methods. But anyway, if you do write a progress report, here's some suggested patterns that you can do. So in the opening, specify the purpose and nature of the project. Provide background information if they need filling in. Describe the work that's been completed so far. Explain the work that's in progress, including people, activities, methods, locations. And then describe, this is sort of those three questions, describe current and potential problems, or any blockers, anything blocking it. And then in the closing, talk about what's coming up next. All right, next one is, let's call these minutes of meetings. I always call them meeting minutes, right? Minutes of meetings, that seems weird. Okay, so that's pretty obvious. You're in a meeting. It's very important that that meeting get recorded somehow for posterity. So I guess what we used to do, and I'm sure a lot of people still do, is one person would be elected to be the minute taker. And they would sit there with their pad and their pencil, and as people were talking, they would write down what they said as best they could. But as I mentioned last week, robots are way better at doing this. So we have a lot of software now that you can either record the audio either on your phone or on your laptop, whatever, and then later transcribe it using software. Or there's software that can transcribe, record and transcribe real time. And that's sort of taken over. Again, depends on where you're working. Some places don't even have computers. Some places have computers for everything. Who knows? But slowly and surely, these kinds of reports are being replaced by automation. Okay, let's see. So if you, as I also mentioned last week, even though these things are being taken over by automation, you're still responsible for the output. You can't just tell your boss, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was a hallucination by the AI." That doesn't cut it. You're still responsible for the output, which means you still have to know how it's supposed to look. So you still need to know, like, if I were to write meeting minutes by hand, what would they look like? So here's a suggestion. Obviously the name of the group as well, the date, time, place of the meeting. This is super important. The names of the attendees and who wasn't there. Usually you always begin a meeting with approving the minutes from the last meeting. And then usually they do this old business, new business kind of thing. If there's these break off committees that were handling certain things, they'll go through their individual reports. And this is also super important, any motions that were made, votes, actions taken. And what this doesn't mention, I don't think, is action items, which is what people always forget to do at the end of a meeting. It's like you do all this talking, but nothing ever happens. So you do all this talking and it has, well, okay, you're going to do this. So you write that down. So and so, action item, supposed to do this. So that when you come back to the next meeting and you're going over approving the meeting minutes, you can say, you had these action items. What happened? Did you do them? Was there a problem? What's your report? Okay, the next one, summaries. We've already done these before. You've had assignments on doing these. It's a book, report, article, website, meeting, or convention, and your job is to squish it down to the most important things. The executive summary. You're going to hand this up to your boss. They don't want to have to go through all the details. They just want, what happened? What's the important stuff? So you have to summarize. And we've gone through this, and there's an assignment. Was that last week's assignment or this week's? You had to write a summary. The lithium-ion battery article. I think that's this week. So we have to write a summary. Again, technology is kind of taking this over. I don't know, that's maybe saying a bit much, but there are AI facilities that can summarize things and they do a pretty darn good job. But again, you're still responsible for the output, so you need to know what a summary looks like. So here's a suggestion of, if you're doing a summary, kind of guidelines, main idea, purpose, as well as the source of the document being summarized. Who wrote it? How can someone else get it? Highlight research methods if appropriate, findings, conclusions, recommendations. You can get rid of a lot of stuff. You're condensing down, right? So the illustrations, examples, details, references, data, you can usually get rid of that stuff. You want to organize for readability, use headings and bullets, enumerated list, paraphrase. We're going to have a whole thing about paraphrasing later. I think it's in 2 weeks. Without copying passages. This is important because you don't want to be accused of plagiarizing. So copying things verbatim out of, any of these source documents. If it's an internal document, maybe you can get away with that. But in general, I have to tell you, you can't do that. You have to cite your sources and you have to paraphrase. You can quote things with literal quotes verbatim. And then, with cross-reference after it. Okay. So that was informational. Now what about analytical? So as we talked last week, it's everything an informational report is, plus you take the final step of analyzing, evaluating the results and drawing conclusions or making recommendations. So when the reader has confidence in you, the writer, that's when you would use the direct message strategy. But if for whatever reason they don't have confidence either in you or the material, or they're new to the whole material, you might want to use the indirect strategy. So as this says, front loading, which is the process of doing the direct strategy, works if the topic is routine or familiar and they're supportive. But if you have to lead them through the process of discovering the stuff, then the indirect strategy is probably better. Next one, justification recommendation reports. Okay, so we have Feasibility and justification, and people always get these confused. What's the difference between a justification report and a feasibility report? So a feasibility report is just answering the question, could this be done? Is it even feasible? Maybe it's impossible because of constraints that you have in your particular situation. So that's a feasibility report. A justification report is, okay, it's feasible, it's possible, should we do it? So one is, can we do it? The other is, should we do it? So again, for non-sensitive topics and recommendations that you think will be agreeable, you can use the direct strategy. Here's sort of a suggestion of the outline. Identify the problem or need briefly, announce recommendation, solution, action concisely. So we're doing it up front. Then your explanation, pros, cons, costs. Include a summary specifying what your recommendation is. However, if they may approach a recommendation with caution, for whatever reasons, you want to switch to the indirect strategy. I mean, it's just really the same thing that we've covered in all types of writing, direct versus indirect. So you start off, here's a suggestion for an outline when you're using indirect, start off in general terms, but you don't go straight to your recommendation. Then you describe the problem that this is about, that you're recommending about, but you still don't say what your recommendation is. Samples, supporting things, quotes from authoritative people. You can discuss alternative plan Bs. And if you do that, you want to kind of build it. Start with the least likely plan C, D, E, or F, right? And then come in order to the most likely one. So at the end, you present the most promising alternative, which will be your recommendation last. And then show how the advantages of your recommendation outweigh its disadvantages, summarize that, if appropriate, specify what actions would have to be taken place. And then the very last thing is you have to ask for authorization to proceed, usually. So you're giving this recommendation, but that doesn't mean you got green light to go. You have to ask, okay, here's what I suggest. Is that okay to proceed? Okay, so I kind of jumped ahead and talked about feasibility. Examine the practicability or advisability of following course of action. Will it work, right? So we have to kind of do this before we can do the other stuff. Like, will it even work? Focus of these is on a decision, reject or accept. So in these kinds of things, for the feasibility reports, it's really not so much analytical, it's more informational. It's like, well, look, here's the facts. I'm not really drawing any conclusions here. I'm just showing you, because of these facts, this is either not feasible or, yeah, we could do it. So because of that, it's usually direct strategy, right? Because it's just the facts now. So you usually announce the decision beginning with description, background problem, have discussion of benefits of the proposal, any problems that may result, calculate costs if appropriate, and a time frame, then conclude with an action request if appropriate. Okay. Last one is what we call yardstick reports. I don't know why they call it yardstick reports, but these are, and this is one that you're going to have to write this week, examines 2 or more solutions. So we can go way A or we can go way B. And your job with this report is to compare the two and try to do some analysis to determine which A or B is the best approach, whatever that might be. So what's critical on these yardstick reports is you have to establish what your criteria is by which you're going to compare these two things. Usually it'll be like cost, availability, things of that nature. But without these criteria, the rest of your supporting document kind of doesn't have any legs to stand on. It's like, well, I could say I like things that are green. That's my criteria. That one's not green, so we should go with the one that's green. I mean, seems silly, but hey, if that was your criteria. Okay, so here's the suggested outline for a yardstick. Begin by describing the problem, explain possible options and solutions, establish your criteria. Explain how the criteria were selected or developed. we're only going with green because green matches the decor of the office, something like that, right? Discuss and evaluate each option in terms of those criteria, and then at the end, you draw your conclusion on which way we're gonna go. Usually it's just between two things, but it could be more. So that's the reading. Any questions on that stuff? All right, so your first report is gonna be a trip report. And I've kind of copied what I thought were the important bullet points out of the reading and put them in all of these assignments at the top. So you can sort of use this as the reference. Okay, so what you're going to do here is you're going to create a trip report and a summary of the top technology found at this year's Consumer Electronics Show. So for a trip report, you want to begin again, and just reiterating, begin by identifying the event, where it was, what the date was, and then a little preview of the topics. In the body, summarize 3 to 5 things that you think the reader would be interested in. And you can use headings and bullets. So here's an example doc out of our book. And it kind of identifies these sections. So what you're going to do is you're going to watch this video. Let's see. Anybody ever been to a consumer electronics show in Vegas? They're crazy. They're pretty insane. This is only 2 minutes. Let's watch it. So this is, you're going to pretend that you're the person that made this video, right? And then watch the video. You can actually get the transcription from this too from YouTube if you want. And then you're going to write your trip summary with 3 to 5 things that you saw that you think are important.
I'm here in Las Vegas for the 2026 Consumer Electronics Show, otherwise known as CES. And this is where brands both big and small come to show off their latest and greatest technology. So join me as I, for the first time, go onto the CES show floor. Let's go see what we can find.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So this is by Vantru. It is a 360 dash cam first, but you can actually detach it from your car and stick it on a tripod and use it as a 360 camera. I don't know if you grew up with these, but I definitely did. They're like miniature versions of the arcades that you would play when you were like a kid. But there's also anti-gravity, which is Insta360's 8K 360 drone. So here's one I'm definitely interested in. This is Zoox. So it's like a competitor to Waymo. I love how it's just a totally different looking vehicle. You know, it's not really a car, it's not really a bus, and also just the way that you sit inside, like you're actually facing the other passengers, so it just feels a lot more communal. Now you've probably seen robot vacuums that mop your floors, but what about one that can climb stairs or clean your windows? But at CES, I saw robots diving into swimming pools to clean them, and even lawnmowers that you can sync together into a fleet if you've got a huge yard. This is the Aper AeroSense 2, which is the world's first 4-in-1 multi-zone smart irrigation system. So basically you can program up to 10 plant-specific zones to make sure that different parts of your garden are receiving the water that it needs. And you can also put fertilizer in, so your plants are getting not only their water, but also their nutrition. There was quite a bit of pet tech. Everything from smart trackers and companions for your real pets, as well as robotic pets if you don't have a real one, and pet accessories of all kinds, like ultra-filtered water bowls, automated feeders, and dog and cat doors, and even this self-flushing cat litter box. So this is Libra Novo. It is an office chair, which might sound a little boring at first, but let's go sit down on it and see. So it's the world's first dynamic ergo support chair. So it actually moves to contour to your specific body. And it's incredibly comfortable. So comfortable that I wonder if I'd actually get any work done if I was sitting in it. What if you could recharge and take a nap in like 5 minutes? That's what this does. It's called the Relaxonic Cover, and it uses ultra high frequency and heat to give you all the benefits of high quality rest in a short period of time. So here at CES, they also have a small section that is food technology, like this Wand Chef. So it's like an AI microwave It has sensors inside to recognize what you put inside of it and, suggest cooking times.
That's what CES is like, and that was this year. So yeah, you're going to pretend you were that person. You're going to write a trip report, picking between 3 and 5 of the things that you saw to talk about. Any questions on that one? Okay, yeah, this is the one I was talking about. So the next one is going to be a summary report. And obviously a summary compresses the main points from a book, article, website, meeting, or convention. And the goal here is that you're trying to save time for other people that are going to read your summary, so they don't have to read through the whole thing. Often they're called executive summaries because they're going up to the CEO to make decisions about things, that you're just going to tell them what they need to know. So here's an article with some tips on guidelines for writing a summary. I think if you had 156, you already read through this. If you need to, you can look through this. But what you're going to do is you're going to read this article that is talking about sodium ion versus lithium ion batteries, which is better. It's a not very long article. It's pretty short. That's it. That's the whole thing. So you're going to read that article, and then you're going to use the business letter template that we've been using before for a few things in Word, and you're going to write your summary. So remember to have these things in your summary: the main idea, the purpose, as well as the source of the document being summarized. Why was it written? Highlight research methods, appropriate. Yeah. We're going through all this stuff. Paraphrase accurately. So here's some example document from our book. And it has these sections. So you just want to make sure you have the same kind of sections. And as usual, if you're using Word, you're going to submit the document by dragging it and dropping it on the rocket. Any questions on that? All right, and then we have a justification report. Recall that those are used to justify or recommend actions such as buying equipment, so on. We have feasibility reports, which, as we discussed, talk about if it even possible. And then yardstick reports. Compare 2 different or more solutions and then you analyze which one you think is the best. Okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to first write a justification report. And this is about your inkjet printer at work. It's just not keeping up with the demand. Too many people trying to print too many things, and this poor little inkjet printer is just not up to it. So what you're going to do is you're going to write a justification report to your manager to get permission to buy a new, faster laser printer instead of an inkjet printer. So you're going to create a justification report, but don't worry about the exact model of printer. We're going to talk about that later. Right now, you're just writing this justification report to get permission to go ahead to buy a new printer. So in this example, since we don't expect the manager to freak out and be negative about it, we're going to use the direct strategy, and you're going to follow these bullet points. There is a example document 9.7 in the textbook, but it's not exactly appropriate for this, so I didn't include it here, but you can look at it if you want in the textbook. So follow these guidelines, same thing, using the business letter template in Word. You're going to write your justification. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, and the last one, I know you got a lot of writing this time. Analytical reports. We already talked about justification, feasibility, and now we're talking about yardstick reports. So following on from your last assignment, that inkjet printer is not working. You've written a justification report to your manager, and you got permission to buy a new, faster laser printer. Now the problem is which one to buy. So you're going to decide this by creating a yardstick report comparing 2 different printers, and then you're going to recommend which one the company should purchase. So typically you're going to do this. You're going to start by describing the problem, explain possible options, and then the important thing is establish the criteria of which you're going to use to compare all these options. Explain how you selected those criteria. Discuss and evaluate each option in terms of those criteria, and then draw a conclusion, which one. Okay, so here's the example yardstick document from our book. So you can kind of look at this to get an idea what the different sections should look like. So what you're going to do is I've given you I've narrowed this down for you to two laser printers, the Canon and the Brother. So take a look at these ads online that I have linked here. Same thing, using Word, business letter template. You're going to create your yardstick document using those bullet points above. And one thing I want to make sure that you include in your criteria is the price on the replacement toner cartridges. So I don't know if you guys know this much about printers, but the printers are cheap. It's the ink cartridges and the toner cartridges where they get you. So make sure you include pricing about that in your decision. All right, any questions about that? Okay.
Can we add like a graph, or does it all have to be all writing?
You can add a graph if you want, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's see, it's 10:20. Maybe we should just go ahead and take our 10-minute break now and be back at 10:30. Does that work for everybody? Yeah, okay, let's do that now, and then we can start in with the grammar thing. All right. Okay, we're back. 10:30. Hope everyone got a chance to go to the bathroom or get their donut or get more coffee or whatever they're doing. All right, so last week we talked about sentence fragments, phrases and clauses. And if you were a little fuzzy on that or you don't remember, you might want to go back and review that before you try this stuff. So as I was mentioning, we learned the parts of speech, and we put those together into fragments, phrases, clauses. Now we're putting those together into full sentences. So we're sort of building up from what we know. So obviously, a simple sentence. Simple sentence is just one independent clause. So remember, an independent clause contains a subject, a verb, and it expresses a complete thought. It has to have all those things to be an independent clause. So a simple sentence is basically just an independent clause with a capital at the beginning and a period at the end. Just add the punctuation, you just turned your independent clause into a simple sentence. So a simple sentence consists of just one subject and one predicate. So in the example sentence, I bought my friend some candy. We have the subject I, we have the predicate, bought my friend some candy. Great. But if that's all you ever do, your writing is boring. It's like those books that that I learned in when I was in grammar school. I don't know if they even use these anymore. Those primers, right? The Dick and Jane thing. Look and see Jane go. Everything's just a short little sentence and it's boring. And after reading that for about 30 seconds, your mind starts to turn to mush. So what we're going to do is we're going to expand our vocabulary here beyond simple sentences into more interesting sentences. And the first one we're going to look at is the compound sentence. Compound sentences, two or more of those independent clauses join together. So that's going to be at least two subjects and at least two predicates. So our example, I visited the beach and I got a really bad sunburn. So those are two independent clauses. Remember, an independent clause can stand on its own. So I could say I visited the beach. And I could say I got a really bad sunburn. So each one of those is an independent clause on its own. And we're joining them together with a comma and a conjunction. And, comma, and I got a really bad sunburn. So we have the two subjects, I visited the beach and I got a really bad sunburn. Now it's both I here, true, but it's still two subjects. They happen to be the same in this example, still two subjects. And we have the two predicates, visited the beach, got a really bad sunburn. What makes it a compound sentence is that you've taken those two parts that could stand on their own and you decided to join them together. One doesn't depend on the other one. They're sort of equal in their standing. Maybe, you got a bad sunburn because you were at the beach, but the sentence itself, I got a really bad sunburn, doesn't depend on the first part, on the first clause. All right? So since they don't depend on one another, you could say that they just coordinate with each other to make this one big compound sentence. We can't just join them by just putting one right after the other. I visited the beach, I got a really bad sunburn. That's a run-on sentence. And we can't just join them with only a comma. I visited the beach, comma, I got a really bad sunburn. That is called a comma splice. So both of those we don't want to do. There's a little video here about run-ons and comma splices that we can watch. So if you can't do that, what can you do? Well, there's 4 things you can do, probably more than 4, but these are the 4 we're going to talk about. The most common, I believe, is what we did here. We used a comma and we added what was called a coordinating conjunction. Those are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And we used the mnemonic, the memory aid, fanboys to help us remember those. So here's a picture. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And they each have a reason that you'd use them. So using for is you're going to give a reason why. Use and just to put 2 similar ideas together. Nor is sort of the opposite. We're going to say it's not this one nor that one. But is if we have a contrast, blah, 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 but this other thing happened. Or gives your choice. This thing or that thing. Yet is for giving contrast. This happened, yet this also happens. 2 different things in contrast. So shows cause and effect. I did this, so that happened. All right, we're going to have an exercise where you have to choose which one of these is the correct for the sentence. All right, so let's put that down for a second. That's fanboys. That's one way of doing it. You can also just use a semicolon between the 2. I visited the beach, semicolon. I got a really bad sunburn. No comma, no and, no conjunction. Why would you use one versus the other? You know what? We're going to have a unit coming up about colon, semicolon. Let's wait until we see that. Third way, you can use a semicolon plus what's called a conjunctive adverb, such as however, consequently, therefore, and a comma. Or you always have the option of just splitting it into 2 independent sentences because they're both independent clauses, and we know that an independent clause is just can be a sentence if you just add the punctuation, right? Simple sentence, independent clause, punctuation. That's always your option, but usually, you had this, maybe that's what you started in your first draft. You had 2 sentences, and you're like, you know what? I don't want to be the Dick and Jane thing. I don't want this to be boring. Plus, these 2 things are kind of related. They're not really on their own. Like I got a really bad sunburn and I visited the beach. They're related. Okay. I think this one's pretty short, right? 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Yeah, let's just watch this thing.
Hello, grammarians. Hello, Rosie.
Hi, David.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Today we are going to talk about run-ons and comma splices. So a run-on sentence is what happens when 2 independent clauses are put together in one sentence without any punctuation or coordinating conjunctions like and, but, and or. So, Rosie, what is a good example of a run-on sentence?
We bought nails, we bought a hammer.
Yeah, so we can see that this sentence contains 2 individual independent clauses. So we've got number 1, we bought nails. Number 2, we bought a hammer. Now, there are a couple of different ways we could make this a legal sentence, but right now, as it stands, this is a run-on, right?
So there are a couple ways we could fix this sentence. One way would be just to add a semicolon in there.
Well, semicolon.
So you've got 2 independent clauses.
We bought nails, semicolon, we bought a hammer.
Right. Another way you could do that would be to just add a comma and then the conjunction and. So you're connecting those two clauses.
So this is a run-on sentence without this and this comma, and it's called that because it's sort of like a runaway train.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have enough stoppage in it. That's how I would put it. So that's what a run-on sentence is. And now I want to talk about comma splicing. And the word splice, not a super common term if you are neither a sailor or a film editor. But splicing is a word that originally meant to take two ropes, untangle them, and weave them back together. It's a sailor's term related to rope lines. In our case, for grammar, a comma splice is an inappropriate joining of two independent clauses by using a comma. So, Rosie, this is Little Tony, Crime Fighting Pony.
Right.
So, for example, in this sentence, I love Little Tony 2, Pony Up to the Streets. It's my favorite movie in the Little Tony franchise. Very fine series of non-existent films. The problem with this sentence is that right now it's got this comma in the middle of it. And this comma inappropriately joins these two independent clauses. Oh, and this whole time, I forgot to say, two independent clauses inappropriately joined by a comma. So we've got independent clause number one. Remember, this thing could stand on its own as a sentence. I love the name of this movie. I love Little Tony 2, Pony Up to the Streets. That could be its own sentence on its own, ended with a period. Period. It's my favorite movie in the Little Tony franchise. Period. But we have these two independent clauses, right? We cannot join them with just a comma. We could say, I love Little Tony 2, Pony Up to the Streets, comma, and it's my favorite movie in the Little Tony franchise. Or, as we did in the previous example, we could also throw in a semicolon, which is, I think, what I would rather do. I love Little Tony 2, Pony Up to the Streets, semicolon, it's my favorite movie in the Little Tony franchise. And Rosie, you will notice that I have underlined these titles.
Oh, yes.
Because these are the names of published works.
Right.
Even though we made them up.
Exactly.
But for real, I would love to see like a Little Tony Crime Fightin' Pony series.
Totally.
So to review, when you're looking at a run-on, you're looking at two independent clauses that are together in one sentence that are joined inappropriately without punctuation or conjunctions. So we bought nails, we bought a hammer. There's not really a place to know where the division between clauses is in that. And so the thing to do is to add a comma and a conjunction, or to combine them using a semicolon. The same deal with a comma splice. It's just that a comma splice is a run-on that hasn't been fixed all the way.
Right. The comma's being used, but we need some bigger punctuation in place of the comma, something like a semicolon, in order to make a distinction between those two independent clauses.
So that is how you identify and fix run-ons and comma splices. You can learn anything. David out.
Rosie out.
Okay, any questions on those two things? Run-ons, comma splices? If I see them in your writing, I call you out on them. Okay, so that was a compound, just putting two independent clauses together, following one of these four techniques to join them. The next type of sentence we're going to talk about is the complex sentence. So in a complex sentence, we start off with an independent clause, but then we add something. We add the second clause is a dependent clause. And if you don't remember the difference between these, go back to last week. We talked about clauses. Remember, we had independent, dependent, restrictive, and non-restrictive clauses that we talked about. There's more, but for this class, those four are good. So, and here's an example. When we buy his birthday cake, we have to make sure it's lemon. So there's two clauses in there. When we buy his birthday cake, and we have to make sure it's lemon. Now the second one, we have to make sure it's lemon. That can stand on its own as a sentence, right? It's got all the parts necessary and it conveys a complete idea. if I walked up to you and said, we have to make sure it's lemon, I mean, you might be like, what do you mean it? Right, because that's a pronoun that, or it's, sorry, that's a contraction. It's like, what are you talking about? What's the it? There had to be some antecedent prior to that, but assuming that happens, we had some discussion about cakes, and I say, we have to make sure it's lemon, you go, oh, okay, complete sentence. But when we buy his birthday cake, it's not an independent clause. If I walked up to you and said, when we buy his birthday cake, you'd be, yeah, and then what? And what? More, I need more. Because it doesn't express a complete idea. And the reason it doesn't is because it has a thing called the subordinating conjunction. When. So because of that when, that turns us into a dependent clause. And you might say, just like we said before on the compound sentence, you might say that they coordinate with each other. Well, here you might say that, well, one depends on the other one. So it's subordinate to it, right? The dependent clause is subordinate to the independent clause. So to join them, we need to use a subordinating conjunction rather than a coordinating conjunction. And a comma. So what's a subordinating conjunction? Well, here's a list. A lot. And I even threw a few more in. This is in your reference section. If you ever need to look it up. Okay, so any questions about that? So if you have one of these words, that's a big red flag to you that that is forcing this clause into a dependent clause, right? Okay, and then the last type we're going to talk about is basically putting the two things together. Compound complex. So compound complex takes the more than one independent clause from the compound sentence thing and that dependent clause, or more than one, from the complex sentence and puts them all together. So you will have at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. Here's the example. After the storm passed, I went outside and I picked flowers. So after one of our things right there. So that's what forces this first part into being a dependent clause. Again, it doesn't convey a complete thought on its own. If I walked up to you and said, after the storm passed, period, be like, and then what? So the other parts of it, I went outside and I picked flowers, those are independent clauses. I can say those to you and you'd be, okay, you went outside, well, okay, you picked flowers. Based complete thought has a subject, has a verb. When we add after the storm passed, that's the dependent clause, and that's what makes this a compound complex. We have at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. Okay, now, if you did take 156, which Kiana did, Elise did, Jamie did, Brandon has not. So if you want some refresher, or if you hadn't taken 156, I have a separate page here that has a bunch of these Khan Academy videos that we've looked at last semester with their transcriptions that kind of go over this stuff in more detail. What's a sentence? Simple, compound, and complex, but I just went over it. More about complex sentences. And more about complex sentences. And then one whole thing about subordinating conjunctions. So if you want some backgrounder, you can take a look at those. I'm not going to go through them today. Okay, so we're in an exercise. What are we supposed to do here? So I'm going to give you two parts. This is a text box thing. We can do it in class. The first part is I'm giving you 10 sentences that you need to combine. See, there are two simple, boring sentences, and I want you to put them together into one compound sentence. But you got to use the right punctuation. Okay. Then the second half is the same idea, 10 different sentences, and I'd like you to combine these into complex sentences by using one of those subordinating conjunctions. Okay, so let's do this. Let me put this in studio. And copy all of these things. Put them in the text box. Make it bigger. Maybe even bigger. Okay, so remember, first part, combining into compound. Two independent clauses combined. All right, number one, she went to work. Now, there's many different ways we can do these, okay? There's no single right answer. There's a lot of wrong answers, but there's maybe not just one single right answer. So let's just discuss it. She went to work. She did not want to go. Oh, I was going to do this. I was going to bring up the fanboys. So, can I make my...
That one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, you were saying?
But,
Yeah, I think
comma, but.
that works, right? If we looked at the different options we have, but shows a contrast, right? So we're contrasting these two things. Yeah, she went to work, but she didn't want to go. Kind of contrast. So but works. So what do we do exactly? What do I need punctuation wise?
Comma,
Comma,
but.
but. And then it's no longer capitalized. Right? Say, well, I'll even do that.
A little bigger.
Little bigger.
Mhm.
Sure. How's that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get both the fanboys thing and this thing up here at the same time. Difficult. All right, number two, the scientists trained him well. They helped him find a job when his training was through. What do we think? We know we're gonna have to.
Semicolon.
We could do a semicolon. Sure, let's just do a semicolon. You know, although I was going to save this for the semicolon lecture coming up, I will tell you this. Your choices for using the semicolon should be guided by how closely related these two independent clauses are. So the way to think of a semicolon, it has a couple of different uses, but in the realm that we're talking about right now today, it's sort of like a period. So when I ask you about commas, a lot of people, like, if I ask, like, what's a comma for? What does a comma do? Most people have this intuitive belief that it's about pausing. And that's true to an extent, but you shouldn't get caught up on that's not the reason. That's sort of the what it does to you. That's the effect it has. It causes you to sort of pause. And in our arsenal of pausing, I even mentioned this in the Khan Academy video we just watched. In our arsenal of things that can cause what is called a stop, right? The English call a period a full stop. So we have our comma, which is sort of a little bit of a pause. We have our semicolon, which is a little bit more of a pause. And then we have our period, which is a full stop pause. So think of those as sort of your food chain of pausing, a little bit to most. So the semicolon would be more of a pause than a comma, but not as much of a pause as a period. And the reason I'm explaining it to you like that is that's what makes using the semicolon, your motivation should be these two independent clauses. I want them to be more joined together than if I used a period, but not as joined together as if I used a comma and a coordinating conjunction in our case, right? So the two, when your decision for when I should use a semicolon versus a comma conjunction are how closely related are these two sentences. I really want them to be linked together. So we could use that here. But like I said, there's many ways to answer this. We could use just and, we could say comma and, right? All right, number three, polar bears are fierce, territorial animals. Grizzly bears are the same. What do we think? Now you may say, oh, I'm just gonna use a semicolon all the time, that's the easy thing. Let's not do that, all right? We saw,
And
yeah, comma and, that works, yeah. I don't think grizzly is a proper noun, right? I think it's just, sure. Number 4, Mark told me not to come with him. He looked longingly as I left.
Yeah.
So let's look at our fanboys again and see like, because this almost seems like opposites, right? He told me not to come with him, but then he looked longingly as I left. So it's almost like an opposite. So what would you think? Very much showing a contrast, in my opinion. So I'm thinking yet. I'm thinking yet. Again, there's many ways you could do this. You could say but and is just sort of like your, I don't know, default go-to for joining two things which are very much equal to each other. But this, I don't feel like this is two things that are equal to each other. They're almost opposites, right? He said, don't come, but then he's looking longingly. So I think the contrast or other ones that show that would be better. Oh, I was going to bold these, right? Okay. Everybody agree with that, or you got some different ideas for number 4? All right, let's go to number 5. I will not give in to you. I will not let you push me around. So again, if we look at our fanboys, what would be an appropriate thing? We could say and, that would be fine.
nor.
Nor would be good too. So we could do nor, let's just do nor. But other things work too. I mean, we'd also say so. Like here's the reason, right? I'm not going to give in to you, so I'm not going to let you push me around. But we could also use nor. It depends on what you're trying to say. So like nor is like, I'm not going to let you do this thing or that thing. Both things or negated, nor. Now, I think if I was doing this though, I think I would change the order, nor will I. I think that's what I would do there. Right? Nor will I. So I think if you wanted to leave the order of the sentence as it was, I would use so. I will not give in to you, so I will not let you push me around. If you want to use nor, I think you'd have to change this, nor will I. We'll use nor. You don't get to use nor very often. Okay, number 6. He loves to drive during the day. They will let him drive before 9 p.m. Again, looking at our fanboys. So this is kind of like a statement and kind of the reason why. So I'm kind of thinking show, cause and effect. So here, right? It's like, he loves to drive during the day, so they will let him drive before 9 p.m. That's what I'm thinking. How about number 7? My cat was hungry. It had not eaten since breakfast. This is another kind of reason thing, right? He's hungry. Why is he hungry? Well, he hadn't eaten since breakfast. So, which one? Did you say 4?
Huh? 4?
Yes, 4. That's the reason. Cat was hungry. Or it had not eaten since breakfast. Number 8, they couldn't think of anything better to do. They decided to babysit for the family. of our options. I don't think for works. We could use and, but that's not really, I mean, it's fine. And they decided, but I think we're trying to say more than that. I think we're trying to sort of have a cause and effect. They couldn't think of anything to do. So they decided to babysit for the family. All right, number 9. A book can be a lot of fun to read. A book can be boring. So here we're given 2 options about a book.
Yet.
Yet, that could be true. Yet gives a contrast, so it can be fun, yet it can be boring. You could also use or, right? A book can be fun to read, or a book can be boring. But I like yet. Let's use the yet. All right, number 10. That movie looks great. I would love to come to see it with you. What do we think? Not really for. I mean, again, we could use and, but we're trying to say maybe a little more here. Nor doesn't work. But isn't really a contrast. We're not saying there's a contrast. It's great, and I want it. That's sort of the same thing. It's not really a choice. It's not really a yet. So what do we think? So one left. Cause and effect. So movie looks great. So, and here's the thing, we have, since we removed that exclamation mark from the first part, we put it in back at the end. If you want to. Okay, did everybody get that? All right, next part, part 2. So now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to use subordinated conjunctions. So if we're using subordinated conjunctions, fanboys, you're out of the question. And I'd bring up the subordinated conjunctions list, but it's so big it's going to use up half the screen. So we're just going to have to wing it. Number 1, they made plans to go. They ended up not being able to make it. Okay, so we know that we're gonna have to put a comma there at least. We know we're gonna have to get rid of that capitalization. But we need to make one of these independent clauses subordinate to the other ones by using a subordinating conjunction. What do we think? Well, I'm thinking maybe though. Because they made plans to go, but then the opposite happened. Again, there's different ways you could do this. Okay, number 2. Some say that dogs are friendlier than cats. Cats can also be extremely loving. Again, we know it's going to be a comma. We know this is still part of the same sentence, but we need a subordinating conjunction. So here we're saying 2 things. Some say the dogs are friendlier than cats.
Even though.
Yeah, like even though, although, any of those kinds of things. I'm going to go with although. Because it's almost like showing 2 opposites, you know, comparing 2 opposites. But even though it would work. Okay. Number 3, what we've accomplished is a milestone. Let's raise our glasses for a toast. Okay, so we know that this is going to be a comma. We know no longer a capital. This one's a little different. This one's a little different. Now, nowhere in the discussion did we say what order the two clauses had to be in the sentence. We never said the dependent one had to be first or second. It can be either. So this one is going to be first, and I'm going to say because. Because if you try to figure out one that goes there, nothing really works. So that's kind of usually what you do. You're like, well, where does it work? At the beginning or in the first one or the second? Okay, number 4. This is similar. Dr. Johnson ate a big meal. He went to work afterwards. If we try to figure out subordinating conjunction here, nothing really works out. So it's probably going to be in the front, right? So we know this is going to be a comma. We know goes back to lowercase. And I'm going to say although. You see, these add a little bit more information when we do these things. Before it was just 2 statements. Dr. Johnson ate a big meal. He went to work afterwards. Okay, fine. But when we add these conjunctions, it puts a little bit more information in. It's saying, well, this was a contrast. He ate a big meal, and usually when you eat a big meal, you don't go back to work. But in this case, he did go back to work. Okay, number 5. I simply cannot get out of bed. I am too tired. What do we think?
Because.
What'd you say?
Because.
Because, yeah, we could say because. Please say because. We could say as, but I think because works good. It's the reason, right? I can't get out of bed. Why? I'm too tired. Number 6. Don't give me a hard time. We've been close friends for so long. You could say because here as well. This has a number of ways you could go. It depends again, like what are we really trying to say? You just gave me 2 facts, but what are we really trying to say? Don't give me a hard time because we've been friends for so long? Don't
Can
give
we
me
say
a hard time.
since?
Oh, what do you think?
Since.
Since. That works. But we could say because, we could say although. Kind of depends what we're trying to really say here. Number 7. We don't believe the way you do. Our culture is very different from yours. I think this is very similar to the one above. We could say since here, right? Since our culture is very different than yours. Sort of a reason why. We don't believe. Why? Well, our culture is different than yours. Number 8. I can't believe that you would do something so crazy. If I were you, I might do the same. What do you think we should put here? I'm thinking although. Number 9. The 2 sisters weren't always this close. When their mother died, they became closer. This one's very interesting in that it's kind of already there. Right? That really wasn't an independent clause. If I walked up to you and said when their mother died, they became closer, you might say, well, what do you mean when their mother died, they became closer? It could be, but when is also subordinating conjunction. So we can just basically change it from a period to a comma. Last one, I refuse to talk about. I was put in jail.
Even though.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Even though. All right, everybody got those? Hit. All right. One homework assignment down. Let me make this smaller. Okay, I have a little module quiz you can do on your own. Just a few questions just to check, make sure you got everything. We do have a discussion. So the question for this discussion is, how might technology shape business reports and their delivery in the near future? So I talked about this a little bit last week, about how certain AI, natural language processing, whatever, sort of taking the place, information radiators. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. So answer that question. And then that's it.
Professor Dwayne,
Yeah,
could we do the quiz together, please?
sure. Let me be a student. Take the quiz. Oh, it's one of these, which one is the most, right? Which of the following statements about reports is accurate? Is it writers develop reports for internal audiences only? We know that's not true. It can be internal or external, so that's off. Business writers deliver reports only through hard copies? No, we know that's not true. We can use email and whatnot. Informal reports of 8 or fewer pages are the most common report in the workplace. Could be true. Business professional rarely write reports. That's not true. So we kind of eliminated all but this one, right? Reports that present data without analysis or recommendations are, what do we think? We know they're not analytical reports because those are the ones that do have analysis. So it could be a justification report, but we know that that also has analysis in it.
Is it an informal report?
Informational.
Informational?
Yeah, information, just the information, just the facts, ma'am. I'm not going to tell you any analysis. I mean, this one has analysis right in the name, that has analysis right in the name, and we know a justification for it has analysis, so we can rule the other ones out.
Informational.
Informational.
The first one.
Second one there.
Oh, okay.
Right.
The first one was the first.
Cost benefit analysis reports. That has the word analysis in it, so you know it has analysis. Can't be that one. Number 3, which of the following reports is an example of an analytical report? So this is sort of the opposite of the other one, right? A report outlining the new company procedure. Well, it's just outlining. It's not really doing any analysis. A report recommending anti-terrorism. So it's recommending. That's possible. Summarizing. No, summarizing, it doesn't do any analysis. A report showing state budget allocations, just showing. This is just information. This is just information. This is just information. So it has to be that one.
Recommending.
Yes, recommending. That's your clue, right? Recommending, that requires analysis. Based on their function, business reports typically fall into one of two categories, instructional or persuasive. Is that true or false? What did we say the two I just gave you, the two things here?
False.
It's false because they fall into either informational or analytical. The direct organization strategy presents the purpose for writing near the beginning of the report. Yeah, you put stuff at the front load, right, for direct. Use the indirect strategy for all analytical reports.
False. Right?
Yes, false. Usually is everything false. Usually the answer is no. All right, here's our grammar. A compound sentence has a dependent clause and an independent clause, has a restrictive clause, has two or more independent clauses, or is a fragment. What do we think?
Has two or more independent clauses.
Yes. You make me so happy. A complex sentence is hard to understand. Well, maybe. Has a non-restrictive clause, has two or more independent clauses, has a dependent and an independent clause. What do we think?
Has a dependent or independent clause.
Yes. We use subordinating conjunctions to make a clause independent, make a clause restrictive, join two independent clauses, or make a clause into a dependent clause. What do you
Make
think?
a clause into an independent clause.
Yes. Very good. All right. Now we're going to see, did I pass my own quiz? Doesn't it show you the answers? I thought it was supposed to show you the answers. Yeah, I guess it marks them red when they're wrong. So I passed my own quiz. Pressure. All right.
What did we put for number one?
Number one. Which of the following statements about reports is accurate? Informal reports of 8 or fewer pages are the most common report in the workplace.
Thank
We
you.
got that just by eliminating the other ones, right? Because the other ones were definitely not true. And I have a
What's
little,
weird? My last question, somehow it changed after I submitted it, and it changed to we use subordinating conjunctions too. And then it's I had joined two independent clauses, and then it's wrong. Wasn't it a different question?
no, that is wrong. It was
Asking a,
make a clause into a dependent clause. That was the answer.
was that what I thought the question was something about a compound sentence, wasn't it?
Add
No,
one
or is it?
in 7.
Oh, it's way up there. Shoot, I'm sorry. I'm really tired. I should. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Okay.
No problem.
No, my questions on my quiz were in a different order than what you
Yeah,
just gave.
yeah, sorry.
Hmm.
Should turn that off. I have randomizing on. Right. Yeah. We usually don't do these in class, so I have randomizing on for all quizzes. Just so that, you know, if your buddy's sitting next to you and you're tempted to look over and look at their answer, it's not gonna work because they're randomized. But if we're gonna do it in class, I'll remember next time. If we're gonna do it in class, I'll go ahead and turn off randomize. Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot about that. Okay. I did want to say about this, you know, the words kind of tell you, we have the two, there's more, but we're just talking about two kinds of conjunctions, coordinating and subordinating. So the words themselves kind of tell you which one is which. So coordinating means the two things are sort of equal and they're coordinating with each other. So that would be two independent clauses. Coordinating, fanboys. Subordinating means one's below the other one. So that means one's dependent, one's independent. So that's telling you that it has to be complex, right? Next. Well, we were done, right? Yeah, we were all done.
Hmm.
Okay, any questions on any of this stuff?
We just have a lot of writing to do.
Yeah, you have a lot of writing, although, they're not long. Like, most of those reports are one paragraph with an opening paragraph, one body paragraph, closing paragraph. So, you know what you could do? You could set your timer on your watch, on your phone to say, I'm not gonna take any longer than a half hour for this assignment. And then it beeps at you, you submit it wherever you are. Time box. Okay, no more questions? Any questions? All right, that's it. I'll be in the CTC on the Zoom if you want to call. See you later.